Hey everyone, welcome back to the English Leap podcast, your podcast for easy English conversation, real daily life talk, and simple listening practice.
I'm Jake.
And I'm Anna. So Jake, quick question. Is it easy for you to ask for help, or does it feel a little awkward?
Honestly, awkward, almost every time. Even when I genuinely need help, there's this little voice telling me I should just figure it out myself.
Right. I think that's such a common feeling, and it connects nicely to our episode about dealing with a bad day, too. Sometimes asking for help is exactly what would make a hard day easier, but we avoid it anyway.
Exactly, and that's a perfect connection to today's topic. Today we're talking about how to ask for help in English without feeling awkward, useful phrases, techniques, and simple mindset shifts.
This is such a universally relatable topic, too, since asking for help, whether at work, with friends, or in daily life, is something almost everyone finds a little uncomfortable sometimes.
Exactly, and for English learners specifically, not knowing the right phrases can make an already uncomfortable moment feel even harder. So today we want to make this feel a lot easier.
Right, and honestly, by the end of today's episode, hopefully asking for help will feel like just another normal, everyday English skill, rather than something scary or intimidating.
Exactly, and who knows, maybe today's episode itself is a form of us asking for help too, asking you, our listeners, to keep practicing, keep showing up, and trust that it's okay to not have everything figured out yet.
I like that framing. Before we start, quick reminder. If you enjoy this episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone learning English too. And tell us in the comments, do you find it easy or hard to ask for help? Great writing practice too. Okay, let's get into it.
Let's start with why this feels so uncomfortable in the first place. Anna, why do you think asking for help feels awkward for so many people?
I think a big part of it is fear. Fear of seeming incapable, fear of being a burden, or fear of being judged for not knowing something.
Right, and there's also a cultural element too. A lot of us grow up with messages that being independent and self-sufficient is important, which can make asking for help feel like some kind of personal failure.
Exactly, but the truth is, asking for help is actually a completely normal, healthy part of being human. Nobody manages everything entirely alone, no matter how capable they seem.
Right, and honestly, most people are far more willing to help than we assume. They just don't always know we need it unless we actually ask.
I also think there's a subtle vulnerability involved too. Asking for help means admitting, even briefly, that we don't have everything figured out, which can feel exposing, especially in a culture that often celebrates constant competence and confidence.
Right, and I think that vulnerability is actually exactly why asking for help can deepen relationships too. Showing a little vulnerability tends to build trust and closeness rather than weakening how others see us.
Exactly. And once you start noticing how naturally most people offer help without judgment, it becomes a lot easier to trust that the same will be true when you're the one asking. Jake, do you have a personal story about learning to ask for help more comfortably?
Actually, yes. Early in a big project at work, I struggled with a specific technical problem for days, completely alone, too embarrassed to ask a colleague who clearly knew more than I did.
Oh, how did that turn out?
Eventually, out of pure desperation, I finally asked, and honestly, my colleague solved it in about 10 minutes.
After days of struggling alone?
Exactly, and what really struck me was how happy she seemed to help. She didn't judge me at all. She actually seemed flattered that I'd asked her specifically.
That's such a common experience, realizing after the fact that the fear was much bigger than the actual reality.
Right, and ever since then, I've tried to ask for help much earlier, rather than waiting until I'm completely stuck and stressed.
Do you remember what specifically made you finally decide to ask after days of struggling silently?
Honestly, pure exhaustion. I had reached a point where the fear of asking finally became smaller than the exhaustion of continuing to struggle alone.
That's such a relatable tipping point. Sometimes we need to hit a certain level of frustration before we're finally willing to ask.
Exactly. And looking back, I wish I had asked on day 1 rather than day 4, since the actual help itself took only 10 minutes, but I lost days of unnecessary stress and lost productivity by waiting.
That's such an important lesson. The cost of waiting too long to ask is often much higher than the small, temporary discomfort of simply asking right away. Anna, what about you?
Mine is about moving to a new city and needing help navigating everything from paperwork to just finding my way around.
That sounds like such a vulnerable situation, needing help with so many unfamiliar things at once.
Right, and at first, I tried to figure everything out completely alone, partly out of pride, partly out of not wanting to bother new people I barely knew.
How did that go?
Honestly, exhausting, and a few things went wrong simply because I didn't ask for guidance I clearly needed.
So what changed? A new neighbor noticed I seemed a little lost one day and offered help without me even asking. That small act of kindness made me realize how much easier things could be if I simply allowed myself to ask.
That's such a lovely example of how sometimes seeing someone else offer help freely can shift our own willingness to ask for it too.
I also remember feeling a little surprised by how genuinely happy my neighbor seemed to help. She actually thanked me for letting her show me around, which honestly reframed the whole interaction for me.
That's such a great real-life example of the exact idea we're going to talk about a little later, that helping others often feels genuinely good for the person providing the help, too.
Exactly. And after that experience, I started asking for small help more regularly, whether directions, recommendations, or just simple advice about my new city, and it made my whole transition so much smoother and less lonely.
That's such a beautiful example of how one small act of accepted help can open the door to a completely different, more connected approach to a big life transition.
Let's go through some practical phrases for asking for help in different situations. Casual, everyday requests.
Hey, could you help me with something? Or, do you have a minute? I'm a little stuck. Work well for casual, everyday situations.
Let's act out a quick example. Hey, do you have a minute? I'm a little stuck with this.
Sure, what's up?
I'm trying to figure out how to fix this. Could you take a quick look?
Right, simple, direct, and completely natural for everyday, low-stakes situations.
A few more casual phrases. Can you give me a hand with this? Or, I'm a bit lost. Could you point me in the right direction?
Asking for help at work. Would you mind helping me with this? Or, I'm having trouble with this. Could you take a look? Work well professionally.
For example, would you mind helping me with this report? I want to make sure I'm on the right track.
Of course. Send it over and I'll take a look this afternoon.
Right. That's such a clear, professional exchange, respectful of the other person's time while still clearly stating what you need.
A few more professional phrases. Could I get a second opinion on this? Or, I want to make sure I'm approaching this correctly. Do you have a moment?
Asking for a bigger favor. I have a bit of a favor to ask. Is now a good time? Gently prepares the other person for a slightly bigger request.
For example, I have a bit of a favor to ask. Is now a good time to talk?
Sure, go ahead. What do you need?
Would you be able to help me move this weekend? I completely understand if you're busy.
Right. That phrase, I completely understand if you're busy, gives the other person an easy, comfortable way to decline if needed, which actually makes it easier for them to say yes, too.
Asking for emotional support. I could really use someone to talk to right now. Or, can I lean on you for a bit? Work well for emotional rather than practical support.
For example, I've had a rough week. Could I lean on you for a bit just to talk?
Of course, I'm here. Tell me what's going on.
Right. That's such a warm, simple way to ask for emotional support without needing to explain everything perfectly before even starting the conversation.
It's worth avoiding excessive apologizing, like repeating, I'm so sorry to bother you multiple times, since a simple, confident request is usually better received.
Right. Instead of, I'm so sorry, I know you're busy, I really hate to ask, but a simple, quick question when you have a moment respects their time without undermining your own request with excessive apology.
Exactly. Over-apologizing can actually make the other person feel like they need to reassure you, which adds unnecessary emotional weight to what should be a simple, normal request.
Let's clear up a few myths about asking for help before continuing.
Myth 1. Asking for help means I've failed or I'm not capable. Actually, recognizing when you need support and acting on it is a sign of self-awareness and maturity, not incompetence.
Right. Truly capable people ask for help all the time. They've just learned that doing so is a smart, efficient way to solve problems, rather than a personal failure.
Myth 2. If I ask for help, I'll be a burden. Most people genuinely enjoy being asked for help. It often makes them feel valued and trusted, rather than burdened.
Right. And think about how you feel when someone asks you for help. Most of us feel a little honored, not annoyed, when someone trusts us enough to ask.
Myth 3. I should be able to figure everything out on my own. Nobody manages everything entirely independently. Even the most successful, capable people rely on teams, mentors, and support systems constantly.
Right. Independence is valuable, but total self-sufficiency, refusing help under any circumstance, often isn't realistic or even genuinely efficient.
Myth 4, one more worth mentioning. Only weak people need help. Actually, some of the most accomplished people in any field openly credit mentors, teams, and support systems for their success. Strength and self-sufficiency aren't the same thing at all.
Right. And recognizing that distinction, strength doesn't mean doing everything alone, can be really freeing for anyone who's been avoiding help out of a fear of appearing weak.
I want to dig a little deeper into something we touched on already, why people genuinely enjoy helping others, since understanding this can really ease the discomfort of asking.
Right. There's actually a well-known psychological idea called the Benjamin Franklin effect, which suggests that doing someone a favor tends to make us like that person more, not less.
Right, it seems counterintuitive at first. You'd think helping someone might feel like a burden, but instead it tends to strengthen our positive feelings toward them, not less.
Exactly. And helping others also gives people a genuine sense of purpose and competence. Being asked for help and successfully providing it feels good. It's not just a one-directional transaction.
Right, and I think about this from my own experience too. Whenever someone asks me for help and I'm able to provide it, I genuinely feel a little proud and useful afterward, not inconvenienced at all.
Exactly. So when you're hesitating to ask someone for help, it can help to remember you're not just taking something from them, you're actually offering them an opportunity to feel useful, valued, and connected too.
I actually tested this idea a little myself after learning about it, deliberately asking a new coworker for a small piece of advice, partly just to see how it felt on both sides.
And how did that go?
Really well, actually. She seemed genuinely pleased to be asked, and it actually helped us build a friendlier, more comfortable working relationship much faster than we might have otherwise.
That's such a great practical example of the theory actually playing out in real life. Small requests for help can genuinely become a natural, easy way to build new relationships too.
That's such a lovely reframe, honestly. Asking for help as also giving someone the gift of being helpful, rather than simply being a one-sided request.
Let's go through a few specific settings where asking for help might look a little different. Asking a stranger for help.
Right, phrases like, "Excuse me, could you help me with something quickly?" Or, "Sorry to bother you, do you know where?" work well for brief, low-stakes requests with strangers, like asking for directions.
And it helps to keep these requests small and specific. Strangers are usually happy to help with something quick and clear, rather than an open-ended, complicated request.
Right, and a warm, brief opening, "Excuse me, sorry to bother you," combined with a clear, specific question, tends to get a much friendlier, quicker response than a vague or overly long explanation.
Asking for help at school or while learning. I don't quite understand this part. Could you explain it again? Or would you mind going over this one more time? Work well in a classroom or learning setting.
Right, and it's worth remembering teachers and instructors genuinely want students to ask questions. It's often seen as a sign of real engagement rather than a lack of understanding.
Right. I remember as a student myself feeling nervous about raising my hand, but every teacher I've spoken to since says the same thing. They'd much rather answer a question in the moment than have a student struggle silently and fall behind.
Asking for help online or in writing. In written messages or emails, phrases like, "I'd really appreciate some guidance on this," or "Would you be able to help me understand this better?" work well for a slightly more formal written request.
Right. And in writing specifically, it often helps to be clear and specific about exactly what kind of help you need, since the other person can't ask immediate clarifying questions the way they could in a live conversation.
Asking family for help. With family, requests can often be more direct and informal. "Can you help me with this?" Or, "I need a hand with something. Are you free?" tend to work naturally given the closeness of the relationship.
Right. Though, as we discussed in our family conversations episode, it's still worth being mindful of boundaries and timing, even with close family members.
Let's talk about something that stops a lot of people from asking for help in the first place: the fear of actually being told no.
Right. And it's really important to remember someone declining to help doesn't necessarily reflect badly on you or your request. It might simply mean they're busy, unable, or not the right person for that specific need.
Exactly. And having a simple, graceful response ready in advance can really reduce the fear around this. Something like, "No worries at all. Thanks for letting me know." Keeps things light and doesn't create any awkwardness.
Right. And it's worth remembering a single no doesn't mean you can't ask that same person again in the future or ask someone else entirely. It's just one small, temporary answer to one specific request.
Exactly. And honestly, most people who decline to help still respect and even admire the person who is brave enough to ask in the first place, since the act of asking itself takes a certain amount of courage.
Right. And separating your own self-worth from any single response to a request, positive or negative, is honestly one of the healthiest mindsets you can build around asking for help regularly.
I also think it helps to remember that a graceful response to a no actually makes people more comfortable saying yes to future requests too, since they know you won't react poorly if they occasionally have to decline.
Right. That's such an important point. Handling a no well actually protects and strengthens the relationship for future requests rather than damaging it.
I also want to cover something practical: how to ask for help in a way that actually makes it easier for the other person to say yes and to help you well.
Right. One key principle is being specific. Instead of a vague, "Can you help me with this project?" try something like, "Could you review just the introduction section? I want to make sure the tone is right."
Exactly. Specificity makes the request feel much more manageable for the other person, rather than an open-ended, potentially large commitment.
Right. And it also helps to suggest a reasonable time frame, whenever you get a chance this week, rather than leaving it completely open-ended, which can sometimes cause the request to be forgotten entirely.
Exactly. And finally, expressing genuine gratitude afterwards. "Thank you so much. This really helped," reinforces the positive experience of helping you, making that person more likely to feel good about helping again in the future.
Right. These small practical adjustments, being specific, suggesting a time frame, and following up with genuine thanks, can make asking for help feel like a much smoother, more positive exchange for everyone involved.
I also think it's worth mentioning timing. Choosing a moment when the other person seems reasonably available, rather than clearly rushed or stressed, tends to lead to a much better outcome for both people involved.
Right. A simple, "Is this a good time or should I catch you later?" respects their current situation while still clearly expressing your need.
I also want to talk about reciprocity, the natural balance of giving and receiving help within relationships, since this connects nicely to feeling more comfortable asking regularly.
Right.
Healthy relationships, whether friendships, family, or professional connections, usually involve a natural back and forth over time. Sometimes you're the one helping, sometimes you're the one receiving help.
Exactly. And remembering this natural balance can ease some of the guilt around asking, since you're not just endlessly taking, you're participating in an ongoing mutual exchange that evens out over time.
Right. And it also helps to actively look for opportunities to help others, too. Not necessarily as a strict, immediate repayment, but simply as part of maintaining that healthy, ongoing balance within your relationships.
Exactly. And interestingly, people who both give and receive help comfortably tend to have stronger, more resilient relationships than those who only ever give or only ever receive, since both extremes can create a subtle imbalance over time.
Right. So really, becoming comfortable asking for help isn't just about your own individual comfort. It's actually part of building healthier, more balanced relationships all around.
I also think this reframes the whole idea of asking for help beautifully. It's not a one-way transaction where you're always in debt. It's simply one small part of an ongoing mutual relationship where everyone gives and takes at different times.
Exactly. And once you truly internalize that, asking for help starts to feel a lot less like an imposition and a lot more like a completely normal part of being in genuine, connected relationships with other people.
I also want to briefly mention something specific, asking for help when you're in a leadership or management position, since this can feel especially uncomfortable due to added pressure to appear fully capable.
Right. There's often an unspoken expectation that leaders should have all the answers, which can make admitting uncertainty or asking for input feel especially risky.
Exactly. But actually, leaders who openly ask for input or admit when they don't know something tend to be more respected, not less, since it shows genuine confidence and honesty, rather than fragile, defensive certainty.
Right. Phrases like, I want to get your perspective on this before deciding, or I don't have all the answers here. What are your thoughts? Model healthy collaborative leadership rather than projecting false, unearned confidence.
Exactly. And teams generally respond really well to this kind of honest, humble leadership, since it also gives them permission to admit their own uncertainties and ask questions more freely too.
We received a great message from a listener connecting to today's topic.
Oh, tell us.
She said she used to avoid asking for help with English specifically, worried it would seem like she wasn't trying hard enough on her own.
That's such a relatable fear for language learners.
Right. And she said once she started simply asking native speakers, could you help me practice this phrase? People were overwhelmingly kind and encouraging, which completely changed her confidence.
That's such a great example of how asking for help, even in language learning specifically, tends to be met with far more warmth than we expect.
We also received a second story from a listener who struggled to ask for help during a period of mental health difficulty, worried it would make him seem weak in front of his family.
Oh, that's such an important, sensitive topic to touch on, too.
Right. He said he eventually reached a point where he simply told a close family member, I'm not doing okay and I need some support. A direct, honest request that felt terrifying to say out loud.
That takes real courage, honestly.
Exactly. And he said his family's response was overwhelmingly supportive, not judgmental at all. And reaching out that day became a genuine turning point toward getting the help and support he actually needed.
That's such a powerful reminder that asking for help, even around something as significant and vulnerable as mental health, is a sign of real strength, not weakness.
Right. And if anyone listening is currently struggling with something similar, we really do encourage reaching out to someone you trust or a professional, since asking for help in these bigger moments matters just as much as the smaller everyday requests we've been discussing today.
He also mentioned that after that first difficult conversation, subsequent conversations about how he was doing became noticeably easier, almost as if that first hardest step created a permanent open door for future honesty.
That's such an important insight. The first time asking for help with something big and vulnerable is almost always the hardest, and it tends to get easier with each subsequent conversation.
Right, and he specifically specifically said he wished he had reached out sooner, not because anything terrible happened while he waited, but simply because he could have felt supported and less alone for longer if he'd only asked earlier. Let's connect this directly to English learning too, since asking for help is honestly such a valuable, underused skill for language learners specifically.
Right. So many learners avoid asking native speakers to repeat themselves, explain a word, or correct their grammar, worried it might seem annoying or reveal a lack of skill.
But actually, most native English speakers are genuinely happy to help, and many even find it flattering when someone specifically asks them for language help, similar to what we discussed earlier about people enjoying being asked for help generally.
Right. Useful phrases here include, "Could you correct me if I make a mistake?" Or, "How would you say this more naturally?" Both invite genuine, welcome language help.
Exactly. And this connects back to our Comfort Zone episode 2. Asking for help with English, especially speaking practice, is honestly one of the best ways to gradually build real confidence and fluency.
Right. And remember, every fluent speaker you admire once had to ask for help too. Nobody learns a language in complete isolation without ever leaning on others for guidance and correction.
I also think it's worth mentioning asking for help specifically with pronunciation or natural phrasing rather than just grammar rules can be especially valuable, since these are things that are often hard to learn purely from books or apps.
Right. Something like, "Does this sound natural, or is there a more common way to say it?" invites exactly the kind of practical, real-world feedback that traditional study alone often can't provide.
Exactly. And honestly, this podcast itself exists partly because we believe in the value of natural spoken English, exactly the kind of language you'd actually use when asking someone for help in real life.
We got a question, what if I ask for help and the person seems annoyed or too busy?
That's such an honest concern. It helps to remember that someone's momentary busyness isn't necessarily a reflection of your request being unreasonable.
Right. And a simple, "No worries, I can ask someone else," keeps things light and doesn't require you to take their reaction personally.
I also think it helps to remember busyness is honestly one of the most common reasons people decline a request, and it's usually not personal at all. Everyone experiences moments of being genuinely too stretched to take on anything extra.
Right. And if the same person seems consistently unavailable every time you ask, that might simply mean they're not the right person to rely on for that specific type of support, rather than any reflection on you or your requests.
Exactly. And having multiple people you feel comfortable asking, rather than relying on just one single person, spreads out that risk and reduces the pressure on any one relationship. Could you help me with something if you have a minute?
I'm having trouble with this. Could you take a look?
I have a bit of a favor to ask. Is now a good time?
I could really use someone to talk to right now.
Would you mind helping me with this?
Let's also try a couple of slightly longer sentences.
I completely understand if you're busy, but would you be able to help me with this?
Could you correct me if I make a mistake while I practice?
I'm not doing okay, and I could really use some support right now.
Try saying one of these sentences out loud today, maybe in a real situation this week.
Let's review a few useful words from today's episode.
First, a favor, meaning a helpful act done for someone.
For example, can I ask you a favor?
Next, to lean on someone, meaning to rely on someone for support.
For example, it's okay to lean on your friends sometimes.
We also used burden, meaning something that feels like an unwanted responsibility.
For example, I worried I'd be a burden, but that wasn't true at all.
And finally, self-sufficient, meaning able to manage without help from others.
For example, I've always valued being self-sufficient, but I'm learning that's okay to ask for help too.
One more useful word, gratitude, meaning a genuine feeling of thankfulness.
For example, I expressed real gratitude after she helped me with a report.
And to decline, meaning to politely refuse or say no to something.
For example, it's okay if someone declines to help, you can always ask someone else.
Try using one or two of these words today, maybe in a comment describing a time you asked for help.
We talked about why asking for help feels awkward, fear of judgment, and cultural pressure toward independence.
we shared our own stories, Jake's technical struggle at work and my experience moving to a new city.
We covered useful phrases for casual requests, work requests, bigger favors, and emotional support.
And we shared a wonderful listener story about asking for help with English specifically.
We also covered common myths about asking for help, why people genuinely enjoy being asked for help, asking for help in different settings, what to do if someone says no, how to ask effectively, reciprocity in relationships, asking for help as a leader, and a second, more personal listener story about asking for support during a difficult time.
Before we close, one last small tip. This week, try asking for one small piece of help you've been avoiding, even something tiny, and notice how the other person actually responds.
Right. Chances are it'll go much smoother than you expect, similar to both of our stories today.
And remember, asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's actually a gift, both to yourself and to the person who gets to help you.
Right. And if it still feels a little uncomfortable at first, that's completely normal too. Like any new skill or any new English phrase, it usually gets easier with repeated, gentle practice. Next time, we're going to talk about something a little different. How to talk about your feelings in English. Useful phrases for expressing emotions naturally in everyday conversation.
That connects nicely to today's episode too, since expressing emotions honestly is often the first step toward asking for the right kind of support.
We're really looking forward to that one.
If you enjoyed this episode, like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments what's something you could ask for help with this week.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode.
Bye!
Bye.